Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on the Sitcom Showdown.
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Sitcom Showdown. It's great to have you with us. I'm Steve. Jeff.
Hello.
You excited?
I am.
You should be, because it's my turn to pick.
I'm always excited when it's your turn to pick because I don't have to do any work. Hey,
Apart from
good.
edit
All
edit
that,
the
yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Apart from that trifling thing. Well, I've chosen a sitcom called I Didn't Know You Cared.
Right, I've never heard of this one.
Right. Any guesses, just based on the name alone,
Wow.
what it might, what kind of thing it might be?
I don't know, romantic comedy of some description?
Romantic comedy.
No? I don't
would
know.
be a first,
well,
wouldn't it?
Someone's caring about someone else, so... Anyway, I'll let you roll with it then, because I'm clearly going to be wrong. Is it American?
No, it's from the UK.
Okay.
It's a British television comedy set in a working-class household in South Yorkshire in the 1970s.
Oh,
And by the way, I've edited the description from Wikipedia here. So
okay.
episodes often deal with significant events in the life of the Brandon family. And for an example, the series opens with an episode called Cause for Celebration, which picks up after the funeral of Uncle Mort's wife.
Okay. So this is set in the 70s.
Yes, correct.
Was it produced in the 70s?
It was.
Okay.
So the title of that...
So, meaning what? That Mort's going to celebrate because his wife's dead?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay.
We're not doing that episode. We're doing the second episode of Series 1. So the following one, and it's called A Knitter in the Family. And what else can I tell you about it? It's from the BBC.
Mm.
There were 27 episodes made in 4 series.
Right.
And it was from 1975 to 1979. So, yes, produced in the 70s.
Okay.
Now, this was written by a guy called Peter Tinniswood.
I've not come across him before.
No?
No.
Well, he was a writer, and this series is loosely based on his books, A Touch of Daniel, I Didn't Know You Cared, and Except You're a Bird.
Right.
It's a bit of an odd title. He did write a further 6 series for BBC Radio 4, featuring members of the Brandon family, and they were recorded between 1987 and 1996.
Huh, so a bit of a gap.
Bit of a gap. Carter Brandon, who's like the main character, he's the younger member of the family. He is played in series 1 and 2 by a guy called Stephen Rea. R-E-A.
Right.
Rea.
Yeah, like
Rea?
Chris Rea.
Chris Rea. So maybe
Yeah.
it's Stephen Rea. He is Irish, so
Oh.
would that be right? Yeah, Rea. I'm not going to bother telling you about the guy from series 3 and 4 because we're not watching him.
No, fair enough.
Stephen, he's known as being more of a dramatic actor. He's been in films such as V for Vendetta, Michael Collins, Interview with a Vampire, and he was nominated for an Academy Award for his lead performance as Fergus in the 1992 film The Crying Game.
There you go.
Yeah, and we saw him recently in a show called Dickensian.
Okay.
His Uncle Mort is played by Robin Bailey,
Hmm.
and you probably haven't heard of him.
It's not ringing a bell, no.
Yes, Uncle Mort is a hilarious character. Robin Bailey first appeared on film in 1946.
Oh, crikey.
Made his London stage debut in 1947 and his first TV appearance in 1950.
Oh, okay.
Many more roles followed in all 3 media, and Bailey became a voice actor for BBC Radio as well. You can see I didn't write that.
He's done it all.
Yep. Now, Carter's mother, Annie, is played by Liz Smith, who I think you will recognise. She was Letitia Cropley in The Vicar of Dibley,
Oh, yeah.
at least in the early seasons or the first
Yes,
seasons
before
of Vicar of Dibley.
her character died.
So she was the one that created the horrible food
Meals.
Yes. Okay. And she also appeared in The Royal Family. Royal Family.
Yeah.
Royal Family. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yep. And she was also in Lark Rise to Counterford. I've got to get my Lark Rise to Counterford mentions in here. And she won a BAFTA for Best Actress in a Supporting Role in 1984
Right.
for a movie called A Private Function.
Okay.
Right, I'm going to keep moving on. His father, Carter's father, Les,
Yeah.
is played by John Comer, So John had a double act with his brother, surprisingly called the Coma Brothers, which was apparently quite a well-known kind of theatrical act, and they actually made the move into movies or films at one point as well. But then his brother left to do other things, and he continued on in the acting gig.
Oh, okay.
And he's probably best known as the cafe owner Sid in Last of the Summer Wine.
Oh, okay.
I'm not really familiar with Last of the Summer Wine, are you?
No.
Carter's girlfriend and later wife is Pat, and she's played by Anita Carey in seasons 1 and 2. So they recast both of those roles.
Oh, wow.
For series 3 and 4. She's not got such a large volume of work behind her. She probably best known for Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads. Also wanted to mention, before we move on from the cast, a character called Uncle Staveley, who is Carter's other uncle, who's played by Bert Palmer in series 1 to 3 and 4. Unfortunately, he's not going to appear in this episode, but he's a classic.
Oh.
He's got a catchphrase. He says, "I heard that, pardon?" And he always appears with the ashes of Corporal Parkinson, who was one of his mates in World War One. Carries him around in a box, which is hung around his neck.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
So he's a bit of a doddering character.
Well, yeah, he'd have to be.
Yes. So, did you remember what it was you wanted to ask?
No.
No?
Oh, no, I do actually, now
You
that
do?
we mention it.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of uncles floating around. Is it ever made clear whether it's the brothers of Carter's mum or the brothers of Carter's dad, or do they split the two uncles between them?
Mort is definitely Carter's mother's brother.
Okay.
Annie's brother. And I'm not actually sure about Staveley.
Okay.
It must have been mentioned at some point.
Right.
Yes, but I'm not sure.
Ooh.
So I can partly answer your question.
Okay, good. So I'm not recognising any of these names here, which is odd for a 70s BBC program, but there you go.
Yes, well, we'll see if you recognise any of them.
Yeah.
All right, let's...
Oh, look, before we go and watch it, though,
yes, all right.
the question, when did you
Another
come across
question.
this show?
Yes, okay, so... I've been thinking about this, but I can't... Well, I can tell you when I came across it. About 6 months ago.
Right.
But I can't remember how I came across it.
Which rabbit hole you were diving down to find that?
If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably either a tweet or a Facebook post from the BBC. I don't know, the British Comedy Guide. 'Cause they're the kind of folks that say, 30 years ago, the last series of whatever wound up, or, such and such passed away 5 years ago on this day, and they were in this kind of show, and so they get you interested in things.
So then presumably, this one's made nomination, but you'd be checking out all sorts of shows that you'll give it a go and it won't grab you.
That's right.
So
I'll try lots of
It
things.
must be good.
Yep. This one caught my fancy.
Now, do people watch this on the YouTube, do they, Steve?
They do.
Okay,
It's out there.
let's go and do
as
that.
most things from the 70s are,
Oh.
if they're still surviving. This one's out on DVD as well.
Well, whichever way we can, we'll watch it now.
Right.
So, you're Carter's mummy, are you, Mrs. Brandon? Oh, he's told me so much about you. Isn't it funny how you can't get your Christmas cake to rise? I like your twin set. Is it bought? Oh, isn't it a pity about the armpits? And who's this one, skulking in the shadows? Is that your daddy, Carter?
Yes.
Oh, who does he look like? I'll give you 3 guesses. You're wrong. And who's this old gentleman with the bloodshot eyes and the florid complexion?
I'm his Uncle Mort.
Oh, well, I should make the most of it, love. You don't belong for this world to me. You're not a heavy drinker, are you? You are, I can see by your nose. Now, you won't let that dewdrop drop on my new carpet, will you? Now then, before we settle down, does anyone want to go to the toilets? Speak now or forever hold your peace. No? Not a word, you're soon pleased, aren't you? Well, come on into the lounge, then. You're not being a nuisance. I'd have had to you back regardless.
All right, and we're back.
Yes, we've just watched A Knitter in the Family. Now you know what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all makes sense. Well, should we tell the people about it?
Yep.
All right. Here's our synopsis. So, Carter and Pat are sitting in a field at the start of the episode, which turns out to be a future housing estate where, well, at least Pat is looking to buy a block. Now, buy a block, is that an Australianism?
I reckon
How would you
it
say
could be.
A
yeah.
plot or a lot?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, we would say a block of land to put a house on.
Yeah.
Yep. And she's spinning out all these plans about how the house is going to look and how it's going to be furnished and all these sorts of future plans. They're just tumbling out of her. And she's quite happy, but Carter's not so enthusiastic. How would you describe him?
Oh, I've written down ways to describe him. I've written Carter is a vacant block.
He's a vacant block.
Yep. Me and Jane, when we see someone like that on telly, we call them a charisma vacuum.
Charisma vacuum.
Yeah.
So you can't see you don't know what Pat sees in him.
Ah. Yeah, look, you're getting to all my notes in the opening
Right,
few
okay,
seconds here,
okay.
man.
Well, I said he's very detached, non-committal, and he's possibly wondering how he's going to pay for her aspirations.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Instead, he goes on a rant about how they're spoiling the landscape with the housing estate, and he talks about
Mastodons.
how mastodons used to wander about here.
And the pit ponies sticking their head up
yeah.
for a bit of rest.
For their summer rest.
Yeah.
He reminds me of what James May might have been like when he was in his late teens or early 20s.
Possibly.
In fact, Carter does, on many occasions, build model ships and things like
does
that
he? Okay.
later. So, yes.
Oh.
Could be a young James May. So anyway, they don't seem to be quite on the same page. And we cut to the parlour of the Brandons' house with Uncle Mort and Les. Mort's walking around pointing at things with his walking stick, and he's pointing out things that need repair in the room. And Les says, yes, I've pointed these things out to Annie, but she won't shift herself and do anything about it, while he's sitting in the chair with his feet up, smoking a pipe and reading a paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you do. Carter and Pat come in. They're offered a seat and a game of dominoes or crib.
What's wrong with these people? Don't they have a telly?
Well,
Yeah. No, I understand. It's the fun traditional pastimes.
we don't actually see their TV.
Because the camera is where the TV would be.
Well, what makes you
speaking.
think they have one?
Well, everyone should have a telly.
Well, but they're a working class family. I don't know if they'd be able to afford it.
Certainly, perhaps not.
I can't remember seeing one in their house, but
Okay.
perhaps. Where have we got to here? Okay, so they're offered this the game. Pat declines. Carter, who has obviously been put up to this, reluctantly asks Les and Mort if they can vacate the parlour,
Yep.
and he does it in the most reticent, roundabout possible way. And of course, Mort just completely refuses to take the hint. But Les eventually says, "Come on, then, let's take off." But before they leave, they give the youngsters a warning about the health implications of kissing and cuddling.
Oh.
Sure enough, with them out of the picture, Pat tries to get romantic, and she's kind of failing. She mentions that there's a plan for Carter's family to meet her mother on Saturday afternoon.
Not Saturday afternoon.
This doesn't go down well. Why doesn't it go down well?
Well, I instantly said football. It turned out not to be the soccer, as we'd call it. It turns out to be the rugby league.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ruggers.
Yeah, there we go. Like, this Saturday afternoons are sacrosanct. You can't be visiting rallies on Saturday afternoons.
What's she thinking?
I don't know.
Yeah, so we discover in the next scene that when the guys are down the pub, that indeed there is a rugby game on, which they wanted to go to next Saturday afternoon, but
they're going to miss out on the bloodbath.
They're going to miss out on the bloodbath. Well, they're hoping it's going to be a bloodbath. So they're playing cribbage down the pub and having a drink. I think it's cribbage, is that?
Oh, let's
that be
say
right?
yes. Yeah. There's little sticks you have to put in holes.
Putting little white things into holes, and they've got something like dominoes.
Yeah.
That must have something written on them. Anyway, if you know
Sounds
what it is,
about right.
let us know. So Linda Preston swans into this particular room of the pub. She's obviously been playing darts in an adjoining room. She comes in and she gives Mort, by the way, she's never met Mort or Les before, but she gives Mort some advice on what he should do next in his game that he's playing. And they have a chat about the football, the rugby, and she's hoping for a bloodbath as well.
Hey.
And she says she'd even buy them a pint if she wasn't skinned. So she seems to go down well with the older gentleman. Now later, the blokes are walking home from the pub alongside this canal, commenting on the beauty of its broken down industrialness.
Yeah.
How would you describe this canal?
Exactly as you did. Broken down industrialness.
Yeah, 15 feet
Brown,
of mucky water with
derelict buildings on either
industrial
side.
buildings everywhere.
Yeah.
There's obviously some kind of a railway line that's disused to one side and everything.
Now it'll all be expensive flats, no doubt.
Probably is.
Yeah.
And they come across Linda again, and she throws a hot chip across the canal to Mort, and he says, "Byack, she's got an arm like Freddie Truman."
Yeah.
Do you know who Freddie Truman is?
I'm assuming a cricketer.
Yes, a legendary English cricketer.
Right.
And she flirts with Carter, who is egged on by the others, and they pretend to walk hand in hand on opposite sides of the canal.
Yeah. That was a bit bonkers, but...
A bit bonkers.
Yeah. Because I kept thinking, how's he going to get over the other side of the canal to hold hands with her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what she had in mind, but
Oh. Yeah.
that's all she's getting. Back home, the guys get into a conversation about women, and Les asks Carter if Pat's mother is a knitter, because there's a rule.
An unspoken rule.
There's like a quota of one knitter per family, and it's a very specific kind of knitting that we're talking about here. It's fair isle knitting.
Yep.
Yes, to have more than one fair isle knitter in the family would mean trouble. So fair isle knitting, Jeff.
Yes, no,
For
I
your
know.
edification.
Yes.
You know.
For the listeners' benefit.
You know.
You can let them know. Yeah, well, Fair Isle socks is the... Yeah, anyway, never mind.
Oh,
I know they're doing pullovers.
I thought I was going to be dropping a knowledge bomb on you.
No,
and I don't
that's
know.
all right. Go right ahead.
Okay, so it's a traditional knitting technique used to create patterns with multiple colours.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's
And-
quite a bit of diamond pattern in Fair Isle.
Yes, and I should say that Mort is sporting one of Annie's
Efforts.
Fair Isle productions. That's it's not a... They said pullover, right? But it's more of a cardigan, isn't it, that he's wearing?
Yeah, if we're getting technical.
We'd call it a cardi.
I mean, it's probably all regional terms.
And he has a good old moan about the quality of her Fair Isle knitting.
It's giving him duck's disease.
Yes, so they depart, and they pull up out the front of Pat's house, and Annie attempts to tidy the boys up. She kind of goes to get Mort's tie and straighten it up, and he kind of backs off and loosens it up and turns it to one side just to despite her, I think.
Yeah.
And
He's not fussed about making a good impression with his potential mother-in-law for Carter.
no, he's not interested.
He
in
doesn't
that at
want to
all.
be there. He wants to be at the league.
Yeah, that's it. Sipping a pint. So Annie asks Carter which house is Pat's house, and he says it's the one with the twitching curtains. But like every house in the street's obviously twitching the curtains.
Yep.
So which one is it? It's the one that's where the curtains are twitching the most. Cue one of the most remarkable tirades ever from Uncle Mort. But I'm going to save that for the best gags.
Okay.
Yep. And we meet Pat's mother at the door, and she's a real piece of work.
She's a character.
She's a character.
Yeah.
That's putting it very mildly. She says, "You're very welcome, seeing as you're only 8.5 minutes late." And getting them into the hall, she pays the guests out one by one, starting with Annie. She skips over Carter, but everyone else gets absolutely smashed.
Yeah.
And after asking if anyone needs to go to the toilet, she takes them through to the lounge, tells Les to sit down in this certain chair,
Yeah.
and just as his bum's about to hit the cushion,
Yeah.
she says, "Oh, that's the one where my late husband inconveniently died on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
But don't make yourselves too comfortable because you won't be staying long."
Yeah.
She exits the room to go out and shout at Pat about coming down to her guests.
Yeah.
Just this horrible big shout. And while she's out doing that, they all take the opportunity to offer Carter their condolences at his future mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And then they go into tea in the adjoining room. I'm not sure what kind of a room, that dining room or something like that. Anyway, so they've obviously then sat down and had tea, and she basically hurries them all up. And then we pick up at the end of their afternoon tea, which she's obviously hurried them through. I mean, half the people at the table haven't even finished eating.
Yeah.
Yes. So she shuts the tea down and orders Annie to the sink to do the washing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
because with what she's wearing, it won't matter if it gets splashed.
So she's insulting her outfit, chaining her to the sink. She's, we'll discuss her later on, yes.
All right. So the guys get shoved back to the lounge to wait. And again, we get commiserations, and they're just gobsmacked by what's going on. And there's conjecture here that Annie won't stand to be outgunned by Carter's future mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're essentially thinking that Carter's got nothing to worry about because the
His
two of them are going to
mum's
have a ding-dong argument and
shut the whole marriage,
Yes.
potential marriage down.
shut the whole thing down. But the ladies come in. Annie declares that they're friends, and she said that once I get used to her tactics, I'll be able to hold my own. Plus, they've now discovered they've got something in common, which is what, Jeff?
Knitting.
Knitting. They're both
And not just knitting.
keen Fair Isle knitters.
Yeah.
What could be worse? So the plans have changed now.
Oh.
They're not leaving.
No, she's not hurrying to push them
Immediately.
out the door because...
Yes, they're going to stay in, and she's fished out not only wool, but a whole bunch of patterns. And they're going to pick patterns for everyone to have something knitted for them.
Yep,
Then the guys can wind a wool?
yep.
And then they can play a nice game of
Whist.
whist, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Play a hand of whist.
So, you won't be staying long, and now they're going to be stuck there till 8 in the evening winding wool and
Yeah. I think they thought at
Intolerable.
one point they were going to be able to...
nick off.
Not you wouldn't have watched the game at
No.
the pub, right, in those days, but...
No.
No. Anyway, they probably would have had time for a pint. But anyway, that all goes out the window. But Pat and Carter are saved because they're going to go and visit... They're ordered to go and visit Auntie Hilda.
Yep.
Whose one fault is that she talks too much.
Yes.
This is announced by Pat's mother.
Saith the lady who talked too much. Yeah,
Yes, the pot.
Yeah.
The pot does not call itself black,
No.
or whatever the...
Yeah.
Yes. And Mort, interrupting Pat's mother, who's talking too much, asks her if she's got a pattern for a shroud,
Yes.
which we thought was his way of saying he'd rather die than
Hang around there all night.
hang around there and have them pick a pattern for him and wind a wool and play a hand of whist. And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
That's pretty straightforward.
There wasn't one big complicated plot that had a million twists that need hours of backstory.
Oh, goodness, no.
No. Which is quite a relief on the format of Sitcom Showdown because some sitcoms need a lot of explaining.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes,
See
this
our
is-
Shakespeare episode from last week.
Yeah.
On Star Crow.
Exactly. Well, should I start, or do you want
Yes,
to...
no, it's probably best if you do.
All right. So this is, I'd say it's a fairly dark comedy,
Yes.
not just because of the biting quips at the opposing sex, but also there's plenty of jokes about death scattered through the whole thing. Do you agree with that? Or
Well, Mort particularly is always giving the impression that he can't wait to
Yep.
trundle off this mortal coil and embrace a bit of
Yeah.
afterlife action.
Let's watch this episode in episode 3 where he's apparently taking a visit to the doctor and he's looking very concerned before he gets there. But then he comes out and he's skipping down the road
What?
on his way home and
With his cane?
doing a twirl around the lamppost and like singing. Is it Singing in the Rain or Fred Astaire or whatever? Yeah, anyway. He's very very happy, and then he gets home and announces that he's been given 6 months to live.
See, that's funny.
So, yeah.
Oh, very good.
It's funny.
But
Anyway.
do they not reveal that until he gets home?
Yeah, that's right. So you
thinking
think he's
been
got...
given the all clear?
Yeah. Exactly. So Carter is staring down the barrel of this life of apparent misery with the mother-in-law from hell and a wife who doesn't seem to be on the same page as him.
Yeah.
Yes, Linda Preston would make seems like she would be a
More suitable. Yeah.
compatible person,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure that she's interested in settling down.
No.
No, she's having too much fun. But Mort and Les seem to wallow in this situation, or
Which situation?
Well, in their... I know Mort's no longer married, but
Yeah.
they seem to be enjoying the...
Opportunity to complain about marriage.
Yeah, as
and
they complain about it.
unload all their regrets and observations on the
Yeah.
institution of marriage.
Exactly. There's no mention of getting out of it.
No.
No, they're just...
It's your job to just keep soldiering on
That's it.
until one of you dies.
It's a badge of honour kind of thing.
There.
Yeah.
25 years, he says.
Yeah, 25
Les
years.
does.
And
Yeah.
then she wants to go on a second honeymoon.
Ah.
Which is probably quite a fancy second honeymoon to the Isle of Wight was probably quite a fancy thing.
Come on now, Steve. It was Isle of
back in
Man,
those
you know.
Isle of Man, Isle of Wight.
Man.
Is it?
I must confess, though,
Isle of
I
Man's even
wouldn't
better.
know the difference between...
Which is the one where they have the motorbike
Isle
race.
of Man. That's the Isle of Man, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Good grief.
Oh,
We're
what is it?
showing,
The TT, the touring trophy? I don't know.
Who knows? That's
We'll
another
have
James
to
May
work on
reference.
that podcast.
Yes, okay.
And then the Fair Isle podcast to go with the economics podcast.
Fair Isle Knitting podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, that would go off.
Where were we?
So there's no mention of getting out of marriage.
Oh, yeah, so they're
apart from
talking
death,
about marriage, right? Yes,
Apart
okay,
from
good,
death.
jolly good.
which is looked forward to as some kind of blessed relief. A small part of me likes this, even though it's kind of horrible, because it's the antithesis of life today.
Yeah.
Any comments on that?
Well, meaning that, people these days get a bit fed up.
Yeah,
And then they get
the hump
split
with
up
someone
at the drop
after
of a hat.
a week, and
Yeah.
they're out the door.
Yeah.
And these guys they've doubled down, and
They're going
Sure,
to
they're
grit their teeth and see it through to the
they're
very
complaining every second of their life. But
end. Yeah.
yes, they're going to see it through until
This
they die.
must be a particular, maybe it's a northern humour thing.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. So now I'm going to talk about sexist jokes,
Yeah.
and I'll be interested to see what you say,
Oh, there's a few in there.
because there's quite a few.
Yeah.
But let's set the context, and I think it's the context that makes them halfway acceptable. So these guys live in a matriarchy, essentially.
Yeah.
And regardless of all their talk amongst themselves, they submit to the women in their lives.
Yep.
I know you didn't see much of Annie asserting herself in this episode, but
No, she didn't
she's-
have many lines.
she very much wears the pants in this household.
Oh, okay.
that they're in, and that's evidenced by the fact that the three of them wait in the living room of Pat's mother's house, waiting for Annie to assert her authority over Pat's mother, and basically break up Carter's engagement while Carter's sitting
There just
with
going,
his
well,
dad and uncle, just waiting for events to play out.
unfold.
Yes. So they're not oppressing women and joking about it in front of women or something.
No.
Something like that. This is more of a bizarre coping mechanism.
Yeah.
So we're watching them talk amongst themselves, and a lot of these comments are plainly ridiculous. And I'll reference here the curtain twitching comments, which Mort
Lighthouse
comes
gag.
out with.
Right then. Carter, which is the house?
The one with twitching curtains. Well, hers is the one what's twitching most.
Curtain twitching. I don't know it.
All live in the curtain twitches. That's why they won't have them as lighthouse keepers. Put two women in charge of Eddystone Light. What's the first thing they're going to do?
I don't know. What?
Bung lace curtains in front of him and we'll spend all night twitching him to see who's coming. Come daylight, half the world's mercantile marine will be wrecked on the rocks below.
Oh, you do talk empty, our Mort. Come on, let's be having you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is something he does say in front of Annie, and it's so ridiculous. She just says, you're full of empty talk or something like that. It's just a lot of nonsense.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was a funny image, though.
It was a funny image. I got a lot of this is ironic humour as well, because there's the scene early in the episode where they're complaining about how their wives don't fix any of this stuff up around the house while they're sitting in the chair
Yeah.
smoking a pipe, doing
Yeah.
nothing themselves. So
Handicap style.
if anything, we're poking fun at the men here rather than the ladies. Any comments on that, Jeff? Did you feel it
On
was
that
acceptable or
Oh, yeah. I
unacceptable?
mean, God, there's a lot worse out there. You know, and I've got a bit of a bugbear where you've got old shows, and I'll listen to podcasts about various shows, and they even do this to Doctor Who. They'll go through everything that was produced 50 years ago with a fine-tooth comb, looking for things to be outraged about, rather than simply getting on with analysing the actual, whether it be the acting or the direction or the sets or whatever, and actually podcasting about a show they like, supposedly.
Yep.
And, you've just got to say that's how it was at the time. We weren't alive at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a bit distasteful by today's standards, but, people were still getting hung.
Yep.
So, yes, that's my stance on the whole thing, is just watch the show, get on with it, except there's going to be some stuff that makes you go, and, oh.
Yep.
That's right.
All right.
That's my official stance.
Okay.
Send your hate mail to sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.
Yep. All right. We'll read that next week.
Jolly good.
Yes. Did you have anything else before I get on to some gags?
I'll save all my stuff for the end, and
Right.
I'll chip in with the good gags and be ready to cross them off my list, because I'm sure you're going to name a few that I identified as being funny moments.
Yep. Okay, so here's some gags. This one is Mort. He's saying, don't worry.
They're all going to be more.
Yeah, well, quite a few are Mort. He's very quotable. He says, don't worry, Les, memory is like a pint of London bitter. It doesn't last forever. Thank God. Oh, goodness.
Well, I've got one written here
Yes,
while you're
right.
searching through there. It's that I'm not going to repeat the line, but it's basically the whole story of Pat has arranged Saturday afternoon, which we've previously said is very poor timing to go and visit the mother-in-law.
Yes.
And then they launch into the fantastic story of Carter's birth. Carter was born on Saturday afternoon while they were trying to enjoy football. And they were at the game.
Yep.
There's 60,000 people in there or something. It's like biggest game in years. And yes, just the whole tale of how the PA announcer had to get on and ask for Les to report to the
Such and such maternity hospital.
Yeah, anyway, so that was all delivered quite well. It was a good story, I thought. So
Yeah. And then the story goes that they didn't rush out because they were too embarrassed, so they waited 10 minutes for a free kick,
and slunk out.
at which point they could, just sneak out.
And
It's funny, so he didn't go, yes! Child's on the way, I'm rushing to the hospital.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm
And then
gonna be
she was all
embarrassed.
upset because they didn't bring flowers.
Yeah.
Where are you going to get flowers at a bloody football match?
Exactly.
Like, the idea of priorities is just zooming right over their heads there.
This
These
is
guys.
this is the one anecdote they remember from the day of Carter's birth.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh,
Then Mort, talking about the weather, on the day that he first met his mother-in-law, it was gale force winds and sleet from the northeast. It was so bad it sank a dredger in Liverpool Bay. All hands lost. He says, I wish I'd been on it.
that's very Al Bundy. That's one of the most Bundy-esque gags I've ever heard. It's a cracker. And it's the timing, of course, because he tells this fantastic story and then, he just waits that perfect amount of time and delivers the punchline. It's really good.
He's very good, this actor. Then, on the subject of dying, we're at Pat's mother's house and her mum's telling the story of her husband dying on Christmas Day, and she says that he couldn't even wait for the Queen's speech.
No. Like as if you're going to put off having a heart attack until after the Queen's spoken.
She also moans about how he wasted a Satsuma, which I thought was a plum, but
No, isn't
they
it
were
similar
suggesting
to an
it's a
orange?
citrus. Yes, okay. I'm all out of order here, Jeff, because
Right.
now I'm going to the curtain twitches gag.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Ah.
First time I heard this, I just lost the plot. I
Oh.
was thinking, what is going on? Where is this rant and where has it come from? It's just so ridiculous.
But it's how he paints the mental image.
Yeah.
It's really good.
We'll move on from the curtain twitching.
Oh.
At the end of supper, afternoon tea, whatever you call it, Mort's asking for another piece of bread to dunk in his peaches and custard.
Yes, because
'Cause
Mrs. Mother-in-law is saying, all right, you lot,
Yeah, come
we're
on,
finished in here.
move along,
Pass
move
us
along.
your bowl.
So he dares to speak up and ask
And
for
he
this.
says, look, I'm not finished yet.
Yeah, and she says, don't you know there's a famine at the other end of the world? He says, there's a bloody famine at the other end of your table, missus.
Oh, that was hilarious.
He gets told off for that one.
Yeah.
And then when they're shoved back through to the living room, he says, I've heard nothing like it and I served all through World War One.
Yeah.
He goes on this huge tirade about
If they'd had her voice back in World War One, then
how he heard the big guns going off on the Somme and this and that and the other, and he heard nothing like that woman's voice.
yeah. It's like, and he rewrites the whole of Western European history based on what would have happened if she'd been there during the war. Oh,
Here's a gag from Les. He says,
Right.
on the subject of Pat's mother, he's just shaking his head and going on and on and on, like she's going on and on and on. She must have been vaccinated with a bloody gramophone needle, which I think is a gag that's going to be lost on the younger generations, but
well, quite.
made me laugh quite a lot. What do you think of that one?
It's okay. I thought it was middling. Yeah.
Middling?
I mean, technically, it should be exactly the sort of gag I really enjoy, but I appreciate it, but I didn't laugh out loud.
Oh, what about this one? They've invented this whole alternate reality now where Pat's mother had helped
Win the war.
helped to win the war early. And they were saying that if, like, they list all these things that would still be right with the world in this alternate reality, there was one with the secret weapon of Pat's mother's voice, and one of the benefits was that you'd still be able to get a good dollop of horse muck for your rhubarb.
I didn't understand the context, but I like the gardening gag. And just the sheer force of delivery is good as well.
Yeah, he's waving his stick around. That's the end of my gags. What have you?
Is it really?
Is there anything you've got there?
I'm surprised. Obviously, this Linda girl who, Pat's a brunette, and Linda is obviously cast to be quite opposite to her.
Correct.
So she wears these low-cut tops and has blonde hair and all that sort of stuff, and plays the darts and drinks the pints, and is cast to be the complete opposite of Pat. And as you mentioned, they're on the canal, and she's, on the other side of the canal, and blah, 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 with the chips. Anyway, so she's clearly trying to seduce Carter and break up this potential marriage he's got going on with Pat. And after all of that, and she walks away, and, Les and Mort are just shaking their heads, and they say to him, Carter, you're an idiot, lad. If you'd played your cards right, you could have had that chip.
Yeah.
And that's all they could think about is the chips.
Well,
but it's like you're just thinking, oh no.
You didn't think they'd be interested in Linda, did you?
Yeah, it was so obvious where that line was going, and then they subvert the expectation and saying you could have had that chip. And it's, oh wow, because they're at that age where they'd rather have a good chip than try and be romantic. Yeah. But anyway, that line was great.
We should also mention that they had commented on her ability to perfectly judge the right amount of vinegar to put on the chips as well.
Is that the chip she threw to Mort?
Yes.
Yeah, look, it's a lost art. And Annie's coming down the stairs, and they've been waiting ages for her to get together, and then they have that whole conversation about her new top and the knitwear.
She was fishing for a compliment on the way down.
Yeah, she really was. And anyhow, so then she starts talking about the virtues of her beautiful son, Carter. Not many young men of his age still have a full Meccano set. And I just thought that was fantastic, that gag. Oh, wow.
Do you think that's what attracted Pat to him in the first place?
He's still got a full Meccano set. Oh, but now you mention it, actually, that is quite a James May thing to still have a full Meccano set.
But
James May isn't a charisma vacuum.
No, that's true.
He's just a partial charisma vacuum. Yep, so that's a couple of gags I identified that weren't on the list there. Right, no, sorry, keep going.
Oh, well, all I've got now is my conclusion.
Oh, okay.
Have you got anything to add before we get to the conclusion?
Oh, well, I've got lots of notes I can say, but
yep.
Maybe I should say them after the conclusion. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, I'll leave it up to you.
Oh, look, here's my first observations.
Yes.
There's a lot of people arguing, and it's all very bleak, and she being Pat, standing there with Carter, the vacant block. Clearly she wants a very different sort of man. And I don't even know what he wants because he doesn't say too much, you know what I mean? So that relationship, you can just see that it's never going to work, and they're going to spend a life of misery together being completely incompatible, just like his father and his uncle and all that.
Exactly, it's a cycle, right? I think he...
Doesn't make you want to watch it unfold, though.
I don't think he's completely dispassionate about everything, but I think his way of getting along in life is obviously just to and avoid...
Path of least resistance.
Yeah, path of least resistance, not answering questions when they're put to him directly and things like that.
Yeah.
So she's saying, what about this, what about that? And he's like,
He's not particularly passionate about anything, is he?
Maybe he needs someone who's going to push him a bit.
Well, probably likely so, I would say, but it's still headed for disaster.
Yes. Yes, I have to agree.
Yeah. But this whole mother-in-law business.
Right, onto the mother-in-law business.
So she got all the best lines. It's a very strong character with some great lines. Not very likeable character, but, she's a force of nature.
I skipped through a lot of the haranguing that she gave them, but...
Yeah, that's where a lot of the richness is, I think. But oddly enough, not in her portrayal. I think if you had a really good comedy actress in there... the best potential of those lines and would have made it absolutely unforgettable. So, no disrespect to the lady who was playing her, and she did a good enough job. But I think in the hands of someone else, perhaps it could have been absolutely fantastically excellent.
I think, like the lady who plays Mrs. Richards, You know, the lady who's got the hearing aid in Fawlty Towers?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's the
that
kind of thing
sort
you're
of
thinking
person.
of.
Yeah, she's good. So that was just an observation I had on her.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, in the opposite way, Mort is very good. He makes the most out of every line and delivers it really, really well.
Yeah, he's got the timing down.
But I honestly think he is Grandad from Bread.
Do you think?
You know what I mean? But Grandad from Bread, had lost a few more marbles. From time to time, he lets on how sharp he is. But yeah, so he's just a hair away from being Grandad from Bread, but he gets 50 times more lines and camera time and stuff like that. But they're just so similar characters. Brilliant stuff. So Mort is good.
I think the radio series they were called Uncle Mort's this, Uncle Mort's that. So
yeah, there
you
you
might
go.
have got even more Mort.
Oh yeah, it'd be perfect for radio.
In the radio.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. Anyway, after you.
Well, my conclusion.
Yes.
I do have one this time. That's got to be a positive.
That help?
Yes. So today we've got the situation of Carter being on the precipice of marrying Pat and meeting her mother, who turns out to be a complete dragon. I think this brings out the best in Mort. Best in inverted commas. He just gets the most hilarious and ridiculous lines as he's railing against this situation, seeing Carter getting married off into this environment. So he's railing against it in the most passive-aggressive way possible. And one of the funny things in this, which I think you've picked up on, is that Pat's mum is in some ways very Mort-like. Like seems as down on men as Mort is on women.
Oh, okay.
With her comments about her husband dying. And similar to Mort, she seems happier now that her husband's gone.
Oh, and this is why she's so hard to deal with, because she's clearly been in charge of that household on her own for many a year now.
Yeah.
And is so used to being set in her ways, she can't imagine that anyone else operates any differently. And is completely blind to the fact that she's hard to deal with.
How does Pat put up with it, by the way?
I don't know. She lives in a fantasy world of romance. That's how she gets out of it.
Carter's got to be better than staying with her mum for the rest of her life. Yes, so Pat's mum is Mort-like. In some ways, she's also the personification of everything he complains about in women. And he's probably the same for her. So we've got this weird yin and yang thing going on there.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I think that's the reason why I like this particular episode so much, is that you've got this really desperate, high-stakes situation of the family going around there, trying to make a good impression in what turns out to be the worst possible circumstances.
Right.
Yep, Pat's mother's just horrible, which creates this horribly uncomfortable situation. You got the guy's reactions to this in the room off to the side, and then, of course, the whole thing backfires on them by the two ladies becoming friends. And even worse than that,
relative.
they're just going to cause or inflict the knitting pain on them forevermore.
Doubled up.
Yeah.
Do they go on to have the subsequent wedding, and then in future series?
You don't see the wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in between series 1 and series 2, is it?
Yep. So I think they're newlyweds in the start of season 2.
Right. And does mother-in-law come back again?
Yeah, you do see her pop around for a visit.
Right.
And they are living
in the new house?
No, not in the new house.
Boo.
Living in the Brandon's house.
Is the house ever mentioned again?
Yep.
Oh,
yep,
okay.
It comes up again.
Yeah, by the time both characters have been recast.
Yep. Pretty much. Well, you can't have them. Yeah, I guess that would make life a bit more difficult for the whole scenario if they weren't close by. I wanted to mention to you. I'll come back and do this.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you want to give your final judgment?
Okay.
Jeff?
Well, look. I will. So
your final thoughts?
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about other things from around the same time, and so I've got a hint of Bread, and I'm just thinking Bread does do this better, and it's a lot of people being very miserable, and it's quite bleak, and it's sort of heading for disaster. Now, Mort is fantastic, but I'm not sure if he's enough to carry the whole thing. But I was just thinking, you've got Bread and also The Good Life and Fawlty Towers at the same time, and Open All Hours at the same time, and you've got the rude sort of Yorkshireman in Arkwright doing the same thing, and the characters in that show are so strong. And then I just think, it's really not on the same level as those guys. And it's what you said before about, because I've written down no sense of stakes. There's a lot of people just sitting around talking or slowly pottering along a canal or sitting in the pub. And I just didn't think there was a sense of stakes. But then you said when they were going to this thing, it's a very high stakes.
Well, that's the way I felt
situation.
about it.
Oh, right.
How's this going to go down?
Because I just thought, well,
are the two ladies just going to...
But Carter doesn't, the world could blow up and he wouldn't notice.
Oh, yeah, well, let's leave him out of the picture. But she's so rude to them. Pat's mum is so rude to them. You think this is just not going to end well. Like,
no, but they're not going to have to deal with her, too much, I wouldn't have thought. Or occasionally, maybe a few times a year.
Back in those days, they must have lived... They were going to be living with close proximity of each other. I would think they'd be around there every second day or something.
Anyway, yeah, so that's just where I stood on that. But I also was thinking about the family dynamic. And Surrey, that episode we watched of Surrey, instantly you get the whole family dynamic as well.
Yep.
And set that up very well. And I just thought this wasn't quite doing it, in the same way. Yeah, so I think it's got good lines and they're delivered well by Mort, certainly. And it has its charms, but it's bleak. It's quite bleak. And as I mentioned, I only heard you laugh twice, but you did explain that by saying you didn't want to guffaw.
Every time I've rewatched it, I've laughed quite a lot.
Yeah. You don't want to unfairly influence me. Otherwise, I'll have to go into the booth next time.
Yep.
Yes, so, I am a notoriously soft touch on this program, but I shan't be putting this one into the Hall of Fame.
Fair enough.
But, you could be able to whip out another episode and see what happens.
Okay, so if everything was at Mort's level...
Yeah, I think so. And I think
more of the characters and that sort of thing.
Wow.
And you want more high stakes.
I want more high stakes, and maybe it would have been good to see more of Annie, the mum.
Yep.
And also, I think just Carter, come on, dude, if this is who the whole thing's built around, does he improve over the course of the series?
Not that I've seen.
Oh, okay, all right. He's hardly Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine, is he?
No.
No. Oh.
No, Pat can't get him interested at all. Yes, no, I can see what you're saying there, Jeff.
Oh, good. I still feel bad.
That's all right.
But one should never feel bad.
They can't all go in.
No, that's absolutely true. I'm just thinking back to the last one that you suggested that went in with Chris in Get a Life.
Yeah. Well, that could have gone either way.
That was absolutely chock-a-block with action and high stakes. They're going to die, they don't die. Will he win the Spelling Bee World Championship? Will he not win the Spelling Bee World Championship? Are they going to get shot by the SWAT team that's trying to get into their house?
Will his other ear fall off?
Yeah, all those sorts of things. What's going to happen to his stomach mouth? And all that sort of stuff. It's highly memorable, action-packed stuff.
Yep.
Full of silliness and craziness.
Anyway, you can't win them all.
No, you're absolutely right.
Oh, thanks for joining us. And it's your turn.
Me or the listener?
Yeah, well, you have to join me.
Oh no, I'm part of the us.
So I'm not thanking you.
Yeah.
No, thank you to the listeners, and we'll see you again in roughly a fortnight, where it'll be Jeff's turn to nominate something this time.
Yes, it absolutely will, and I predict that one's going to struggle as well.
No.
Okay. Yes. We'll see how we get along with that one.
All right, I'll look forward to it.
Oh, cool.
See you then.
Right, bye. Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.